Hello, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World Talks. The European Commission has proposed a budget for 2028-2034 timeframe. The 7-year spending plan introduces changes which will now be a subject of a heated debate across Europe and the bloc's parliament. And to discuss it, we're joined by Zsolt Darvas, economics expert and senior fellow at the Brussels-based Breugel think tank. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. So, why has it been dubbed the most ambitious budget by Ursula von der Leyen? And do you agree with this statement? Is it, in fact, an ambitious budget?
So this budget is the most significant changes compared to the previous one. If you look at the history of EU budget proposals. But in my view, it's still not ambitious enough. For example, Mario Draghi identified a major investment gap for the European Union, around 800 billion euros per year. Now that's both for the private and public sector. But if you just look at the component for the public sector and within that, what the EU should pay for, it's still the increase should have been much, much bigger than what the Commission proposed yesterday.
So why do you think such a gap is still present? I guess it has something to do with higher taxes, and those are always controversial.
Indeed, several EU countries have to implement fiscal adjustment in their national budgets. So EU member states in general are not very eager to pay larger amounts to the European Union budget because one way or another, even though the Commission proposed some new revenue sources, also those will be paid by national member states, at a time when they also have to cut their national expenditures. So indeed, it's a difficult process for national finance ministries to contribute more to the EU budget.
Right. Could you tell us what are the most significant differences between the current budget that the EU is still under and the planned one?
The most significant difference is related to the composition, whereby, according to the proposal, the share of agricultural spending and cohesion spending combined will be reduced quite substantially. In the current budget, their share is close to 70%. In the new budget, it will be just about 1/2. So there is a major reduction in the relative importance of cohesion and agriculture. But at the same time, spending on competitiveness and related issues increased substantially. Also, there was a proposal to increase spending on external action throughout the world. There was a major increase proposed for cross-country energy infrastructure projects increase. So there are major increase also in research and Erasmus education spending at the European level. So there was a shift away from cohesion and agriculture to more productivity and cross-country related expenditures.
And what do you think of these changes?
I very much welcome these changes, but I would have hoped for more radical ones. In particular, the farmer subsidies as a very sensitive issue. Farmers often come to national capitals to demonstrate, but unfortunately the economic evidence suggests that these subsidies are not really helpful, for example, for food security. It's more a kind of social policy for supporting a better life for farmers. So I'm afraid there is little rationale to finance farmer subsidy from the EU budget. I would have proposed, and in fact we did propose, to shift farmer subsidies to national budgets and therefore free up more resources for spending which is genuinely European. And indeed, we can get inspiration from the Draghi report that there are lots of spending needs. So I would have hoped for a much bigger increase in investments in common European infrastructure.
I guess such a proposal would be highly controversial, especially in such countries as Poland, which is well used to these subsidies for its agricultural sector. What about Hungary?
Indeed, the first reactions from many capitals in Europe was very negative against the Commission's proposal. So, I mean, since unanimity is needed for the final approval, certainly there will be very strong, fierce debates and discussions between EU member states. Also, the European Parliament highly disagreed with the proposal and the proposed cuts in agricultural spending. So there will be major debates. Maybe the Commission, wanted to, catalyze a debate, so propose something which would be maybe too much for everyone. As I said, it is too little for me, but too much for politicians, so that even if they scale back this proposal somewhat, it will be still, a movement toward the right direction.
Right. You said that large sums will be now allocated towards competitiveness. Now, how is Europe to become more competitive exactly towards China and the US?
So the European Union budget, has some tools to foster competitiveness. One of the most important tools is European research, which is one of the most successful European Union program. And I believe in every capital, from Warsaw, Budapest to Berlin and Paris, agree that European research spending has been a great success. At the same time, if you look at, for example, innovation activities in Europe compared to the United States, then we see that Europe lags behind. So any measure, including from the EU budget, which can foster innovation and research, that can be very helpful for the competitiveness of European industries. Another major aspect is helping the completion of the European single market in many different dimensions. For example, the new proposal places a strong emphasis on energy network connectivity, which will be also very beneficial also for companies from a competitiveness perspective, because then EU countries can better manage their energy systems. And this might also lead to somewhat lower energy prices, which would obviously benefit European companies.
Now, what are sums allocated for Ukraine's recovery and, well, and more generally for military purposes? Are there enough?
So Ukraine might be included in the regular 7-year budget because it includes some pre-accession assistance. But perhaps even more important, that the European Commission proposed a separate fund which would be outside the regular 7-year budget, up to an amount of 100 billion euros in the next 7 years, which could be used for supporting Ukraine. Now, the communication also stated that it's very unclear at this stage how much money Ukraine would actually need and how this fund would be used. And beyond this 100 billion fund, there is also the already existing so-called European Peace Facility, which was used so far by the European Union to provide military assistance to Ukraine, because the European treaties prohibit to use the regular EU budget for military and defense-related spending, so it simply cannot be done. And therefore, this fund existed outside the EU budget in the past, and it's proposed to continue in the future to support Ukraine in military equipment.
Right. Now, why are regional funds such a bone of contention in this discussion that's only about to begin now?
So a major issue for regional funds is, first of all, there are two major issues I would highlight. One is that the share of regional fund would also go down somewhat compared to the current budget. and countries benefiting most from it, most notably, Central European countries, including Poland, quite obviously would like to avoid further cuts to cohesion spending. But I'm afraid this will be somewhat unavoidable. And also some justification is that both Poland and other Central Eastern European countries continued their economic convergence over the past years, irrespective of the global financial crisis and the COVID crisis. So these countries generally performed relatively well and narrowed the gap. So since they have, a smaller gap now to Western European nations than a decade ago, some decline in the cohesion fund, I think, would be reasonable. But the other main concern is that cohesion and agriculture will be merged into a single big fund, and countries will have to prepare so-called national and regional partnership plans to access those funds. It will be somewhat similar to the recovery fund after 2020. And there is a concern that such funds would be too much centralized and would much less take into account the view of regions and other local stakeholders. So it needs to be seen how the final design of these major plans will actually look like, and indeed whether there will be a meaningful involvement of regional and local experts in the process.
Right, so to sum up, as we're discussing macroeconomics at the moment, how will the new budget impact the everyday life of EU citizens? How will it change, for you and for me?
The EU budget already brought benefits to many citizens, and I expect that this will continue. And since some small increase in the overall budget size is proposed, hopefully this will also imply that the positive impacts will continue to influence everyday lives. For example, a boost to Erasmus, the education program, will help young people throughout Europe for better education opportunities to move to studying for abroad. That will be very immediately, directly felt by the people. If the new competitiveness instruments will be able to indeed support innovation and growth, then everyone will benefit from somewhat higher economic development throughout the European Union. But again, unfortunately, I have to stress that the proposed increase in the overall size of the budget is very, very small. Moreover, some countries like Germany and Netherlands already expressed that they wouldn't agree to any increase. So I'm afraid that even this modest increase by the proposal by the Commission will be eventually scaled back by EU member states. So the ultimate budget might not be that different from the current
Well, we'll
budget.
see. The negotiation process begins. Zsolt Darvas, economics expert and senior fellow at the Brussels-based Breugel think tank, was our guest this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching and stay with us for much more news and features here on TVP World.